Hey guys, my name is Sunny and welcome back to A&J Education YouTube channel. In today's video, we're going to be talking about getting a very strong reference for your master's application. So if you're thinking of doing further higher education, keep watching because this video is for you. Alright guys, so back in the studio with me here today is Jamie. Hey Jamie.
Hey.
Good to see you. Jamie, how do you get a reference for your masters? So, I understand from our conversation just before the video, there are sort of two types. You can either go into masters straight after your undergraduate.
Yeah.
So you don't have a break, and then and obviously some people go into employment or they take a break and go into masters later, and there are differences in sort of approach to securing references.
Yeah, for sure. So there are differences, as you just mentioned. So track one, I would say, is when you've just finished the undergraduate degree or you're finishing it soon and you're applying to do a master's and, you need a reference. So starting off with that one, when you're applying, for the various different courses on their websites, they'll have a box which says, enter the names or the email addresses of your referees. So that's the way, you put in their emails, it gets sent off to them, and then, they're alerted, hey, Jamie has asked for a reference from you to study this course at this place. Now, that is not the first time, if you're an undergraduate student, that your referee should know that you've asked for a reference, right? So if you're playing it correctly, you should have primed the professors beforehand saying, hey, I'm thinking of applying to these places, I'm interested in this and this and this. I would appreciate it if you talked about my academic ability in this way and that way, and kind of you want to really emphasize, especially as an undergraduate, your strengths, your grades, and what kind of learner you are in class. So you want both of your references. That's another note. You normally have 2 to 3 references for a master's application. You want your references to be completely academic and show what you've done, treat it as a showcase for what you've done during the last 2/3 years of uni. Yeah.
Okay, makes sense. And obviously, if you can be strategic about this and sort of say, look, you're brilliant teaching at undergrad, it inspired me to do this master's. And,
yeah. You definitely want to make sure that when you ask them to do it, you're coming from a place of appreciation, for sure, for tactical reasons.
Yeah, they don't have to do this, right? I mean,
yeah, of course, they're going out their way to write you a statement, and I'm sure they get loads of requests. So making yourself stand out when you ask them is a good idea.
Yeah. And just just on that, so I'm guessing, how can you sort of increase your chance of getting a good reference? It's all the things like trying your best.
Yeah,
handing homework on time, participating in class.
Sure, yes.
Maybe they've got a sort of an opportunity to volunteer, help a professor.
For sure. I think all those things you just said were perfect. So, trying to build up a relationship with your referee is important. So helping outside of the classroom is really good. Making sure you get good grades so they can just look at a spreadsheet and go, Jamie's done really well this term. That sort of thing's really good. And on top of that, I would say another thing you could do is email them with just questions sometimes, asking them, hey, I was reading this paper and I thought about this and this and this, and I know it's your area of expertise, I was wondering if you could explain it to me. And it demonstrates the sort of curiosity that masters or universities like when students apply for masters.
Cool. All right, Jamie, and then what about the second track? So what if you leave your undergraduate degree,
sure,
you take a break or you work or whatever, and then you want to go into masters a couple of years later. I mean, how on earth do you find a reference now? Because surely you've, you don't have that immediate connection with your professors because you don't see them. You're not at the university anymore.
Yeah, no, of course. Sorry, just before we touch on that, one more thing about the undergraduate applicants who apply. Try and make sure that your references are from as different as professors as can be. So if you've got one professor, let's say you were applying for, finance. If you've got one professor who looks at, the more maths side of it and teaches you how to code, and another professor who looks at some more maths, it won't look as impressive to them because they'll both be saying the same things compared to 2 professors, one who might be teaching you, management theory, and another one who's teaching you the maths. So if you keep the topics as separate as possible, you can show more sides of yourself.
Oh, that's really good advice. Thanks.
And then going back to the question you just asked about, if it's been a few years since you've been at university, you want to change your strategy, slightly. So what you want to do is you still want an academic reference, at least one, I think that's important because you want to show them what you used to be like and how capable you were when you were in an academic field.
Yeah, and just to interject there, so typically universities specify we want 3 references. 1 must be academic, 2 must be academic. And if they don't specify, it's totally okay to send an email to the course administrator and say, look, out of your 2 references, are they both academic? Are they both professional?
Yeah,
Like, you
yeah,
know.
that's a very good point. It's always good to try and find that balance because if you send in 2 things that are academic, let's say, and you've not been in university for 10 years, they'll say, okay, but what are you like now? What have you done now? What potential learner could we be, having at this university? And if both our applications or references are from 10 years ago, they can't really see that.
No.
Yeah, for sure. So as you going on to the second or third reference, you want it to be professional. So you want it to be from someone in your firm who normally gets sent references, and you want to get them to discuss what you're like as a person now, what you kind of contributed, your work ethic, and if they can link it to skills you'll need for the course, even better.
Okay. And in terms of getting an academic reference, when when it's been a couple of years out of university, how would you go about that?
So the first thing I would say is it's completely normal. Professors know this happens all the time. People reach out to them from 10, 15 years ago when they've moved universities twice. So from the professor's perspective or your referee's perspective, it really won't be weird. So the first thing I would say is, if you're in that position, don't worry that you're being odd or weird and you feel uncomfortable and procrastinate about it. It's perfectly normal to do. In terms of what you say to them, I would suggest giving them a bit of a story about why you're doing this and saying, you taught me this and this and this, and it led me to this career path, and ultimately I think I want to go here. So you give them some context, but also you kind of get them to sympathise with where you're at right now in your life. And unless the professor has a very good reason not to, that should be enough to secure a good reference.
Cool. All right. And from my experience and experience with our students, it's always a good idea to invest time into maintaining a relationship after you graduate. Even if you're not thinking of doing masters immediately, there could be job references. It could be, it's just useful, just basic courtesy and
100%.
common sense. Even if it's just maintaining sort of a LinkedIn once a year message email.
Yeah, exactly. I think LinkedIn's a really good way to do it because if there's one thing I know, academics love posting on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Just even a small comment saying, this is really great work, or something like that to keep them in your head.
Yeah. I mean, often you see, this person, they spend 3 years working on a project and then get this big prize or big achievement and then get 5 likes.
Yeah, for sure. So that's definitely a good idea. I recommend that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Jamie, this was really, really useful. Just finally, in the last couple of minutes, often, obviously, it's the referees writing the reference, but, is there any way that you as an applicant can influence what they put in or sort of direct them? Because it would definitely help if they can coordinate what you're writing in your essay with the reference, or at least back up the claims you're making in your statement.
Yeah, for sure. That's a really good question. So what I would say is try and have a strong sense of what you're going to write in your personal statement first, because then if there's any gaps or there's anything you want to talk about that you didn't have time to fit in or didn't have space to fit in, you could ask them to put it in instead. If you go to the referee before you've written your personal statement and ask them to talk about you generally, they could write the reference, then you write the personal statement, realise there's a bunch of things missing, and, I don't think they'll be too happy to be told, can you rewrite the entire thing to fit in the things I missed? So I would say get your personal statement done first, and then it makes it easier. So then the second thing leading on from that is once you then email them, you can say things like, it's easy, I guess, if you've had a gap. If you've had a 10-year gap, it's very justifiable for you to turn around to them and say, I've done this, and I've done this, and I've done this, and here's my old transcript where this and this happened, and, things like that. It's quite easy to influence what they write in the reference because they will want to know more information from you at that point. It's a bit more tricky if you're already, if you are an undergrad currently, because they kind of already know what you're doing to an extent. I still think it's completely acceptable to email them saying, hey, just for, reference or to make things easier for you, here are some things I've done, outside of the classroom. I'm working with Professor so-and-so on this project, and I'm doing this and that. And, you can't necessarily guarantee that they'll incorporate those things. But if you phrase it nicely and say, I'm thinking of writing this, could you potentially mention this? Most of them should be pretty amenable to it.
Cool. So it sounds just approaching this from a place of respect and
Yes.
appreciation of their time and not kind of entitlement and sort of
Exactly.
they don't owe you anything.
Yeah, exactly. And expecting, I think a lot of students might think, I've got, I'm in the top 15 in the year. My grades are amazing. I've got all these great ideas, and that's all great. And I'm sure the students are great, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you can expect the professor to name you the biggest hotshot in the year.
Yeah.
You have to still put in the work, no matter if you're a first class candidate or you're, on a 2-2.
Yeah. Cool. Jamie, this was very insightful. Guys, I'm sure you'll agree in thanking Jamie together with me because, this was really useful. So if you're thinking of applying for masters and, reference is a key part of that. So I hope you guys enjoyed this. If you did, please like this video. Subscribe to our channel to help us grow because we spend a ton of time and effort into making these videos as useful and as relevant to you guys. And so we would really, appreciate some of love and appreciation from you. But for now, thanks so much. Thank you, Jamie.
No worries. Thank you for having me.
And all the best, guys. Good luck.